And now we are joined with one of the greatest coaches in the world of mixed martial arts. And he has a huge bill of order this weekend with 4 of his City Kickboxing talents taking to the octagon. Most notably, of course, Israel Adesanya against Paulo Costa. Eugene Bareman now joining us from Abu Dhabi. How are you, Eugene?
Yeah, no, I'm feeling pretty good. I've just had dinner, and so I'm just preparing to nod off.
Yes,
and after I talk to you guys.
You have a unique sleeping schedule here already, right? You guys are trying to be primed for fight night. Is this more awkward in the desert heat of Abu Dhabi?
It is. It's a little strange. Like our body clocks, we've been training this whole time, but what's different about it is obviously that in Abu Dhabi, it's the middle of the day and stuff. Like it's like right now is it's an awkward time to try and go to sleep. We've been today would be considered a late night, like it's 6 o'clock here. But I've been trying to go to bed around 2 or 3. So that's because I have guys fighting in between anywhere from 4 a.m. till 7:30 a.m.
My
so I've
God.
got one guy at the start of the card, and then a couple spread in between, and then I've got obviously Israel at the end. So, yeah, between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. approximately, which is quite a...
And you guys are obviously Australia as well. She's the time difference.
New Zealand.
New Zealand. Sorry,
wow.
that time.
No, that's
I said
offensive.
that time zone. The Australian time zone.
Sorry, we can only apologise, Eugene. That's an absolute. That's like him saying, "Oh,
You didn't let
guys
me
are in
finish.
England.
You didn't let me
English
finish.
Sorry.
Oh, you go, APT. You go.
But
But how do you work that out with the fights? Do you have to get literally like a pen and a pad out and write down, your schedule? It obviously has to be to a T in preparation.
Yeah, so we've been training in this time zone the whole time, no matter what country we've been in, whether we were in Las Vegas for the last week or whether we've been in New Zealand. So our body clocks are used to this time. What's different is what actual time it's been in each respective country that we've been in. That's changed. So in New Zealand, it would be 11 a.m. when we would be training for our fights. But in Abu Dhabi, it's 4 a.m. So in each respective time zone, that the actual time where we are changes. But we've been training at the same, getting our body clocks ready at the same time for the fight because we knew it would be at this time. Wow. So, yeah.
I remember, and I've heard all about you guys kind of living together in preparation for this, and I just, my mind went back to when I interviewed you in Melbourne ahead of the Whittaker fight, and one of the questions we asked you that got a lot of traction was, do you think fame will change Israel Adesanya? And I gotta say, if he's in there sleeping on the gym floor, I'm pretty sure he's still the same guy, right?
Yeah, I think the culture of our team and the culture of just our country, I guess, is probably lends itself towards being very grounded, I think. And I think it all just helps. I think we're one of the best at it. I think we always have this constant reminder of where we've come from, and we never get too big for our britches. So I think it's just part of our culture.
We love New Zealanders here. There's one man that lives down the road here, former Ireland coach Joe Smith lives around the corner here. So he's grounded like you guys and us guys. I think that's where we're similar. But I have to ask you, this fight, so many people are excited about this. It's one of the fights of the year between Izzy
absolutely.
and Paulo Costa. For you as a coach and looking at Costa, is this for you the biggest puzzle of your career to try and sort out in terms of the biggest fight, the most difficult one to break down?
If I'm honest, truthfully, I'm going to say no. Yeah. Yeah, like it hasn't been one of the more difficult fights that I've had to study and break down. I mean, the opponent is like... the opponent presents a very particular problem within a very within a certain field, and we don't have to there's not as many variables as if we're preparing for someone even in the striking department. There's not as many variables as if we're preparing for someone like a Max Holloway or a Dustin Poirier. It's been a little bit simpler in that respect. So the short answer to that question is no, not really.
Do you look at Paulo then as maybe one-dimensional? You know what's coming. It's about just trying to stop what's coming.
Yeah, I'm not going to say one-dimensional. He's got a few dimensions, but he just doesn't have as many. He doesn't have the diversity of a lot of the other middleweights and a lot of the other people that I've had to prepare for in the last few years. So it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that we haven't put in as much effort into it. It just means that it's been easier in many respects.
Do you look at it? You mentioned some of those the repertoire skills Paulo has. Do you believe then those skills outweigh maybe a more diverse repertoire, and Izzy possibly has to be at his best ever in this fight against Paulo Costa?
Yeah, I mean, Israel has to be his best because Paulo Costa is a very dangerous opponent in respect to he maybe not be seen as a one-punch knockout artist, but he is definitely someone that if he hurts you, he's very good at closing the door and making sure that he capitalizes on that. And so we can't afford to get hurt in any instance. And he has to be very sharp because he does have that ability to hurt you in the blink of an eye. So Israel has to be very sharp in that respect. You always have to be that sharp, but in particular with Paulo Costa, more so than like someone else who doesn't quite have that danger.
Yeah. Devastating power.
It's for me. I actually think when I'm thinking about the fight, Eugene, I'm thinking about the way Paulo fights, and I'm actually so excited to see someone coming at Izzy like that,
big time.
because he's so sophisticated as a counter fighter, and I really feel like that's when you see the true beauty of him. Like against Whittaker, the things he was doing, even with his head movement and his upper body.
Fantastic.
And I'm thinking about, wow, this bulldozer coming towards him, and then Izzy like artfully trying to figure this out. I think people could, like sometimes he takes a lot of criticism, like after some fights, because they're saying, oh, he's not, there's not enough action here. But I feel like this fight, it's guaranteed, right? Like I feel like the people are going to come away from this with a lot more respect for Izzy.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, like we need this. You need a catalyst for the type of fighter that Israel is. You need someone like Paulo Costa that's going to, I guess the word is be brave enough to come through some adversity. And Paulo Costa is the kind of guy that's proven in the past that he's the person to do that. Where perhaps a Yoel Romero wasn't willing to do that. Paulo Costa is showing that he's willing to do that to get the victory. So that's what makes the fight particularly exciting, I think, for fans.
Have you seen the reaction to this exchange they've had in the hotel? I mean, people have seemed to decipher this in so many different ways. Why aren't they pulling each other's heads off? Or, this is actually pretty great that they're like this with each other, based on everything that happened with Colby Covington over the weekend and the kind of divisive nature of everything that happened. I personally thought it was actually really nice to see these two guys who obviously have a big rivalry being quite manly to each other. I'm sure that's the way you'd like Izzy to conduct himself in those situations.
Yeah, I mean, that's more closer akin to what I'm used to, but it's like this is such a different sport now. The UFC's changed the sport completely. Like when I started fighting, you couldn't utter a single word about your opponent before a fight. Right. Otherwise, you'd be having a fight before you even had a fight. Yeah. Like it just wasn't done. Like you weren't. You knew that if you disrespected someone in the same manner that these guys do to antagonize each other nowadays, that wouldn't happen when I started fighting. Like you wouldn't even get to the fight because you'd already be fighting. Like nowadays, like it's just the UFC and the art of promoting has just changed everything. And these guys there's a different line. The line's been moved. These guys are willing to push it a little bit more. and it's just a different culture surrounding the sport now. Look, these guys, Israel's the ultimate businessman. He knows how to sell a fight. He knows what he has to do. What the tricky thing is whether your opponent sees it that way or whether your opponent's taking it more personal.
Yeah.
And that you never really know until they come face to face with each other, right? So you don't know if you're on the same page in terms of promotion, or you don't know if that other person has really taken it to heart. So I think what that showed is that there's a respect there. I still think there's some animosity there from what from the conversations that I've had with Israel, but there's like a healthy respect for each other's abilities.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily for each other as people, but definitely for each other's abilities. And I think that's what you saw there. That what's missing from that footage is the footage that we got, because obviously Israel has his own cameraman that follows him around.
Oh, tell us.
Tell us. Very interested.
Well, it's nothing. Look, it's nothing like, it's nothing TMZ worthy, but
it's something different to what we saw.
Well, okay, so they walk past each other and they exchange looks or maybe a couple of words, and they just kind of walk past each other. Then Israel kind of says to his wrestling coach that he's with, he kind of changes his mind. They walk about 20 or 30 meters past each other. Israel kind of changes his mind and goes, you know what, I'm going to go and, I'm going to properly approach him. So Israel's turned around, you know what, and then starts walking back towards him, and then Paulo and them see him walking back towards him, so they stop. And then Israel's like, you know what, I'm going to shake your hand once before the fight. So Israel actually says, oh, you know what, I'll shake your hand once.
Right.
And then at that point, that's when that exchange happens.
Right.
Now, I know why Israel does this, because Israel loves to get a read on his opponent as soon as possible, just to get a feel for them, to feel their energy. He loves to get in there, to just be around them. That's how he gauges a lot. And like in fights like the Brunson fight, he's recalling stuff that happened 2 years before that fight, exchanges that happened 2 years before the actual fight even happened. And it was just one of those moments. Israel just wanted to be in front of him and feel him. It was Israel just doing what he does and just exchanging energy and getting himself in the right frame of mind. So that's how it actually went down. It was actually Israel turning around and walking back towards Paulo after they kind of just fleetingly walked past each other.
Did he mention if he took anything from that afterwards? As you said, like he likes to get a measure of his opponent. Did that give him an extra insight that maybe he hadn't had previously?
He did.
What did he say?
And that's where this conversation is.
Very good, very good.
How
very
important, though, is this? Like when you look at these 4 fights with Brad, Shane, and Kai, how important is this for City Kickboxing? I know that you're not the type of guy that sits around all night and busies himself about social media and brands, etc. like this, but you guys are huge at the moment. And then you go in and do what you expect to do Saturday night. That's going to push it to another
level.
Stratosphere again. Are you conscious of that, or is that just happens by proxy? You don't worry about that. That's just the way it goes.
Nah, definitely the latter, Pete. To be honest, I don't.
Not surprised, Eugene.
Yeah, I don't think of things like that. What I'm more with the pressure, where I think about it more is that each individual guy. There's a lot riding on these fights for these guys' future, and not just their ranking and where they're going to go and where they're going to take their fight career, but also just in the immediate future. If these guys lose, they get their pay cut in half. That's the cruelty of the payment system that we're employed to fight under. Like, first and foremost, we have to win so that they can double the amount of money they're taking home to feed their dependents, and that's the kind of thing that I think about more than any great victories for the gym or any benefit the gym can get. That's just that's just how I think of it.
Well, that's why you are the man you are, Eugene. I got to say, I've so much respect for you. But I was wondering, as you say that, it feels like Dustin Poirier, the reason why he's standing out of this Tony Ferguson fight is because he's looking for that base level pay where I'm not relying on, winning. I'm just, no, this is how much money I'm going to get. Do you feel like these times when it seems like more and more fighters are kind of saying things and hinting at this issue, do you think that this could be a changeable thing that we see in MMA, most prevalently in the UFC, over the next year or so? Or do you think they're always going to try and kind of put it that way, that format of pay?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big advocate for that format of pay. Like you can pay them their full amount, you can pay them half their amount. You're going to get the same amount of effort, the same amount of drive, the same amount of whatever you're looking for, bloodshed or whatever, out of them, regardless. What they do have to be paid for and well compensated for is the sacrifices that they make for the benefit of the fans and the company. And that is payment, and that payment is made sometimes in, dare I say it, blood. Like sometimes they have to leave a piece of themselves in the cage. In some of these fights, some of the fights that Dan has are horrific.
Oh yeah, unbelievable.
They're horrific.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, they're like train crashes. Like,
yeah,
he has to be. You can't. How can he go through some of the fights I've seen him go through and get his pay cut in half because he loses a split decision or something? Yeah, it just doesn't sit well. I would even be in favor of doing more like a 80-20 type split. Like, you get a little bit of a bonus if you win, but you don't get half seems to me just to be too much to take off a guy.
Yeah, it's crazy. And
any word on Hooker, by the way, with the Ferguson thing? I know you were speaking about our buds over at Submission Radio about that. Has there been any talk about that from the UFC to Dan?
Not that I know of. No. Not that I know of. I'm not privy to the plans in terms of that. But Dan would be keen. He just needs a little bit more time.
Yeah, I think they've sort of ruled it out at the moment anyway. I think Tony and Dustin want to fight each other, so that sort of rules it out. Is there any other fight you'd like to see for Dan take before that? Would it, I know Paul Felder talked about potentially running that one back. Would that interest you guys?
Fight. Jesus Christ,
that was an unbelievable fight, one of the best fights of the year.
But why would you do it if you're Dan?
I do understand that. Yeah, is there anything there that tickles your fancy for Dan outside of the Tony Ferguson potential meeting?
But Dan presents a big problem in that top 5 division where he's not the biggest name, he doesn't have the biggest following, but he presents a lot of risk. So that's essentially what we're kind of facing. It's kind of like, in the welterweight division, Leon Edwards is in that same bracket, where he's a very skillful fighter that can cause a lot of problems, but doesn't have the marquee name that some of the other top guys in the division have. And I think Dan's has that same problem. The thing is, Dan will fight. So if Dan has to collect a name from below him, just to keep himself active, then I think that's the difference between Dan and some of those other guys in the top 5, is that some of those guys in those top 5 aren't willing to fight someone in a lower ranking than themselves, whereas I think Dan realizes after the Poirier fight that he might have to give a shot to someone that's ranked below him.
Yeah.
Wow. Eugene, just one more, and I know this is a bit of a headline grabber, but I gotta ask, because the Adesanya and Jones thing was such a big deal for such a long time. Now Jones has gone to heavyweight, and I looked at that like that could be one of the biggest fights in the history. You know what I mean? But I mean, is that gone now? Is that basically gone because he's gone to heavyweight and the weight disparity, you'd imagine, would just be too much? Or do you believe that we possibly could see that fight one day?
No, the fight's still there for sure. Like the weight disparity is not going to be a problem. The heavier Jones gets, I believe, the better it is for us. So the fact that he has to go up even heavier, that he probably will be sitting heavier than he would be at light heavyweight, I feel would probably be better for us anyway. So the fight's still there if that's the route that Israel wants to pursue. But I think it leaves another interesting part. There's another interesting part to the equation now that where Israel, if he kind of like does a good job clearing out this division, and again, we don't want to get caught into that old thing of looking past the fight that's in front of us. But there's good challenges for him at light heavyweight, even though Jones might not be there. There's some really good fighters that match up really well with Israel.
Is that something he'd consider? You know, potentially a super fight next summer against the light heavyweight champion if he was to win on Saturday night?
I think he would consider it, to be honest. I think, look, Israel's Israel's getting to the stage where he wants as bigger fights as he can get. And the middleweight division's done a funny little thing where the Darren Till fight was looking like the biggest fight, but then he's gone and lost. Who's Cannonier got? He's got
Whittaker this weekend.
Whittaker. And then you've got Hermanson has got, who's he got?
Darren.
He's got Till.
Darren, yeah.
So it's in a funny position where like it looks like the biggest middleweight fight for Israel is actually going to be the rematch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But probably, yeah.
Wow.
That's a good point. So.
Yeah, it's like, you know, that looks like, considering they won't, if Robert wins, they're not going to give that fight to Till, seeing as Robert just beat Till.
Mm.
So Till might be the biggest fight on paper, but he's not going to get the fight. They get a Robert if Robert wins. So then that means that leaves the biggest possible marquee fight for Israel is the rematch. And I know that he's not going to be particularly enthusiastic about that. So when he kind of takes a lay of the land,
205.
205 is going to be really appealing to him. Otherwise, it's the rematch with Robert. And I don't know if that particularly appeals to him. So,
wow. I'm very excited. Oh my God!
You've made our day here now, Eugene.
We've kept him way beyond his bedtime at this time. So, Eugene, thank you so much. I can't wait to see all your guys in action on Saturday.
Definitely.
Truly one of the great stories in mixed martial arts at the moment, and long may it continue. Thanks so much for staying up and speaking to us, and I really wish you the best of luck and continued success for as long as you may be coaching, my friend.
Really appreciate it, Eugene, too. Appreciate it, man.
All the best, my friend.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. No problem. Good to talk to you.
Legend. Thank you.